Hello everyone, I'm Ben Stemrick, and this is the follow-up question where we break down what's going on at City Council in Allentown, the third biggest city in the fifth biggest state. This week was another special meeting on the American Rescue Plan funding, and it ran nearly 3 hours and covered a lot of hot-button topics. It focused on public safety, infrastructure, and city capital projects. Council also heard from representatives from the Lehigh Valley IronPigs and the Da Vinci Science Center, which we've been hearing a lot about over the past few months. The meeting started with public safety and Dr. Helona Oakes, professor of political science at Lehigh University and director of the Marcone Institute, which according to the Lehigh website is dedicated to research and study that influence prospective practices and policies on racial justice. Oak spoke about crisis intervention training in a co-response model, which is when law enforcement work together with some kind of medical or community professional. Oak says her studies show some of the main problems are the loss of funds to mental health services, widespread trauma and low access to care, and the increase in police arrests and force rather than de-escalation. Take a look.
People report experiencing police-led models as traumatizing, arbitrary, negative. They find few resources offered in those interactions. They prefer family, friends, and mental health professionals to respond to mental health crises. There is strong evidence that co-responder models reduce the use of force, reduce arrests, and improve access to care. The evidence indicates that co-response models reduce wait times and times on call. Given the reduced rates of violence, efficiency gains, and improvements in access to care, we can also anticipate or hypothesize that there's likely to be an enhancement in trust as well. Co-response models show the greatest gains for low-income communities of color while making everyone else safer as well.
Another presentation was given to council by Dennis Fabo on a mentoring program called the New Jersey Credible Messenger Movement. Fabo spoke to the importance of guidance and the presence in kids' lives as well as adults and what his New Jersey chapter and the national program of Credible Messengers represents. Here he is on the financial repercussions of not being more proactive.
So we would argue that because Lehigh County contributes so much to the juvenile justice system, and Allentown City contributes so much to the juvenile justice system of Lehigh County, that by Allentown creating a strategy that deals directly with how much money we spend on punitive measures for our juveniles, for our children. Here in the state of New Jersey, we spend $435,000 a year to put a juvenile through such system. I'm wondering what that looks like for the city of Allentown. How much do we spend from Allentown and from Lehigh County to, in a punitive fashion, punish youth or any individual, especially for the minor crimes, in order to gain what we think is justice, to then kick them out of the prison or kick them out of the jail the day their bid is over with no support, no assistance, and expect that this person is rehabilitated and is going to be able to turn a new leaf. A lot of our adults who are coming home need an extreme amount of support. We understand a lot of our adults who are coming home don't have access to employment because of their record. It becomes impossible to obtain an apartment and rent an apartment because they might have gotten evicted because they just did a bid. And now because they're on the eviction list, they cannot rent an apartment. And I know if I grab one adult who cannot pay for their rent and cannot attain a job, then how are we really creating justice?
The Allentown Chief of Police Charlie Roca spoke during the public safety portion of the meeting. He started by talking about crisis intervention training.
I want to bring you up to speed on what we're doing in relation to our CIT mental health process. So crisis intervention, as you heard from Dr. Oakes, is a 40-hour program. It talks about de-escalation. It talks about role-playing. It talks about bringing in mental health professionals from various agencies to teach our police officers and give them insight into how it is in the mental health world. I was even touched when I personally attended the mental health training that goes through CIT and heard a mental health consumer talk about their experiences. What does it do, you say? It humanizes that situation, because as police officers, we are part of the community. I will never stand before you and say it's us versus them or anyone else. This is what we're doing together to propel Allentown ahead. You heard Mayor Turk said all in for Allentown, and that's what it's about. And in this instance, with our CIT program, it has been in existence since 2017. And in that capacity, Drew Taylor from Lehigh County has successfully trained our officers, in addition to other staff members that have joined, such as Sergeant Ben Yopes from our department, who is a doctoral candidate, and as well as making presentations throughout the entirety of Lehigh County, because CIT is an effective model. Basically what it does, it triages the response of the officer. So as the officers go into a location where perhaps we do get multiple 911 calls to that location, that officer can look at that and say, is this a police emergency or is it not? We have officers in our department that have masters in clinical counseling. We have officers that are pursuing masters in other fields relating to the efforts done. So it's important that we look at the whole picture of police officer and not equate police to violence, because police to violence is not the answer here in Allentown, and it's not, as chief of police, it's not what I advocate for. We have to have community approach. We have to be considerate of what the rules of the laws are and make sure that they are enforced appropriately, and we do have that understanding for us going forward as a community.
Rocha also talked about an existing relationship the department has with Pinebrook Family Answers, who is a trauma-informed service agency that provides for vulnerable families in the Lehigh Valley. They partnered with the Allentown Police Department in 2017 for what's called the Mental Health Liaison Program. According to the Pinebrook Family Answers website, the program has a 98.8% success rate of avoiding incarceration.
That mental health liaison served as a resource point, a referral point to when the officers go to a location and they find that the incident has some underlying mental health issues or something that we can refer them to. It was sent to the mental health liaison at that point. What we found in action was that the individual mental health consumer, the person that was going through mental health issues, did not really like that term mental health liaison calling them. They said, I have no mental health issue. So in looking at that, we made a change and made the term community intervention specialist. And that was able to capture what the person fully does, because it's not just about the mental health concern, but that whole community approach.
One member of council asked Rocha if any data is available on the community intervention specialist study being conducted in the city, and he said that the study is still being completed, but the data is being compiled, and those doing so could speak to council about what they are seeing. Now, Chief Rocha also spoke in favor of potentially adding 10 more police officers with the ARPA funding. Infrastructure was also on the agenda, and it started with Kevin Easterling, who's with the Allentown Digital Inclusion Initiative. He spoke about digital equity and inclusion and the importance of high-speed broadband internet and where Allentown stands.
About 51,000 households that we have in Allentown. Of that, we have about 28,000 individuals in this city who are disconnected, who don't actually have internet. And so I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Digital Equity Act that the Biden administration just passed, but there's a lot of money coming down the pike for internet connection, disconnectivity, and digital equity. Unfortunately, because Allentown has been, no pun intended, kind of left in the dark for a while, we don't have the community infrastructure quite stabilized to actually apply.
The Da Vinci Science Center is building a new facility in Allentown on 8th and Hamilton Street and has asked council for $1.5 million of the ARPA funding for that project. Here's Lynn Erickson, CEO and Executive Director of the Science Center.
I want to share a couple of key points. First, we need the support and the funding now. This funding is critical to enable the city, enable the Science Center to build a world-class facility that invites and welcomes all and serves as a regional hub for STEAM learning. Construction has started. If you've gone by recently, the pavement is gone. We're doing some soil testing now in terms of issues associated with prior entities that were on the site, and we have to address those. But soon you will start to see steel coming out of the ground. We've raised $64 million of our $72 million goal. And we need support from the city to fill that $8 million gap in funding to fully develop the new Science Center. Fully completing the Science Center with all of the planned facilities and amenities, educational, equipment, exhibits, will benefit the city in two key ways. The first is that it will allow us to build the kind of visitor experience, the kind of family destination that will attract people from a 100-mile radius. The kinds of experiences we are proposing are on par with those in major metropolitan cities. Second, it will allow us to provide potentially life-changing experiences for Allentown youth, especially in the Da Vinci STEAM Learning Center, and ensure our ability to serve low and medium income children and families, regardless of their ability to pay.
Councilwoman Cece Gerlach addressed prior concerns that the new center would end up pricing out local residents. Gerlach thanked Erickson for listening and responding to those concerns. She also brought up some new concerns about staffing.
Most of our people in Allentown are people of color, people from all over the world. What is the plan to make sure that your staff, who may not necessarily reflect that now, will reflect that when this opens?
Yeah, we think that's very important also. We have started working to try to attract a more diverse pool of candidates. Now, we're not a huge amount of hiring will come as we get closer to opening, but we have just in our existing operations, summer camps and existing staff are always changing, as well as some of our initial new hires we need to do for the expansion. One thing we've done that has been successful so far is advertising for for example, a bilingual educator. Instead of advertising for a science or a STEAM educator, advertising for a bilingual educator. That immediately gets a different pool of candidates. And then looking at our job descriptions and working closely with the language project to look at how we put those together. You know, is it, if our first priority is bilingual, and then we want some experience with youth and some science background, maybe we don't need someone with a degree. You know, so looking at what are the skills, valuing skills more than educational degrees, and valuing experience in this community more than educational degrees. We've got to make sure you have the basic skills to do the job, but we're trying to work through our job descriptions and trying to change the titles so that helps with a different pool.
The Da Vinci Center's new 67,000 square foot facility is expected to be done in 2024. Also looking for $1.5 million in American Rescue Plan funding is the Lehigh Valley IronPigs minor league baseball team. The team's president and general manager, Kurt Landis, spoke to council about their record with the city. He mentioned the 600 employees, which a quarter of them are residents of Allentown, $70 million spent with Allentown businesses since 2008, and charitable donations and more.
Hear the presentations and the incredible work that so many people are proposing or so many organizations want to do, and they're all incredible. If it's public safety, infrastructure, youth, recreation centers, I've heard a lot over the last 6 months, quite honestly, and they're all incredible programs. I think we're actually a little bit different because we've been here for 15 years doing the things that you are trying to find avenues to do now. We're asking your support that we can continue to do the things that you want to do new and provide new programs that we've done successfully to provide an accessible, inclusive ballpark that provides for economic output and quality of life.
Landis brought up the IronPigs losing a season because of COVID and how it hurt the team. Councilmember Candida Affa took exception to that, but also had good things to say about the Pigs.
That the last thing I want to see is the Pigs leave our city. I believe all the things here, and it's amazing what you do for us. But using COVID is not a good idea because so many of our businesses, and you're a business, so many of our businesses have closed because of COVID. So that doesn't play well with me as far as the funding which you're asking for. What I like about it is the fact that it's a brand here in our city, and you have done well with our city. And I believe that many of the citizens aren't upset with the Pigs or Coca-Cola Park, because we know what, I think they're upset with Major League Baseball is what it is. You know, they're putting the pressure on you. If we don't do this, you're out. And I think they use the ARPA funding to think, yeah, well, we don't have to fix up our ballparks now. We're going to ARPA to do it. So, but that's beside the point. The point here is, I personally don't want to see us losing a AAA team. And I know how important it is to the average citizen who can afford to go to these things.
ARPA mentioned the MLB. Now, we've heard Landis speak at meetings before saying the team would be forced to leave by the Phillies if they didn't get this funding. The relationship between IronPigs and the Phillies started in 2008 when the team was founded, and in 2020, the contract was extended by 10 years. When that contract was extended, the Phillies' assistant general manager at the time, Brian Maniti, said the Lehigh Valley franchise and Coca-Cola Park are among the crown jewels of minor league baseball, and we are happy to continue our relationship with them. IronPigs owner Joe Finley also addressed council. He talked about how the team has never asked the city for any money even during construction, and he also talked about one way the city profits off the land the park is on.
There was a lot of pressure on us actually to put the ballpark and the Pigs at Lehigh or Lafayette because they wanted to use it for their baseball teams but we didn't want to be disconnected from the community. So it was important for us, I'm a kid from Camden, New Jersey, Craig's from Pittsburgh, to be in the city, in the center of things, immersed in the community, rather than over at Goodman campus or, in Easton and at Lafayette. So I like to think we accomplished that goal, but what we also did is subdivided the original property to make sure that the city of Allentown and Lehigh County could participate in the casino revenues, the tax there. So I think it's $3.5 million that the city of Allentown gets every year, and Lehigh County gets I think a similar number, because we forced the issue of dividing our leasehold interest.
Council members Alpha and Hendricks did show support, while Council member Gerlach was the only member who asked any questions or said anything else otherwise. To wrap this meeting up, Mayor Matt Turk spoke about capital projects from HVAC units in city buildings to sidewalks, fire departments, and more. Now, the city has until 2024 to commit all of their ARPA money to certain plans, and that's a total of $57 million. Then they have until 2026 to actually spend it. Now, remember, you can watch the mayor and the rest of what he had to say and the rest of this meeting and any other meeting live or old on the city website. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Follow-Up Question. The next meeting is set for Wednesday the 17th. I'm Ben Stemrick. Thanks for paying attention.